Evening, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch, Monday, May 19, 2025. Continuing the topic of the geomagnetic excursion and its effects on our planet. I'm going to cover a few different things. So with the ongoing geomagnetic excursions, it's been a relatively simple directional excursion where magnetic north left Nunavut, Canada area around 1903, 1904, and has been on a directional straight line excursion headed towards Siberia. Magnetic south has been on a move, but at a much slower pace, as if some external magnetic force of attraction, SAL, is trying to keep it in place. Now, if my suggestion is correct, that the planet is now beginning, at the beginning stages of developing multiple magnetic poles, a multipolar field, which will result in a complicated excursional field behavior. There will be no forecast modeling, no trajectory courses. We, at least the general public, we're not going to know where the next weak areas are going to be. So we go from simple excursions, which are recognized as relatively common occurrences associated with field intensity minima. Now, there is the European Space Agency, hang on, I'll show you while I talk. Now, the European Space Agency has created what's called the SWARM mission, which is a series of satellites designed specifically to monitor Earth's magnetic field on its strength, direction, and variations of the magnetic field. We, of course, are not going to be privy to this information. So they do have a mission in place, the European Space Agency, to monitor the current state of our protective magnetic field. Now let's talk about our jet streams and destructive weather events. Our jet streams are out of their normal, expected, and predictable patterns and behavior. And because of the geomagnetic excursion weakening our protective magnetic field, it allows increased levels of those highly energetic particles, which results in the streams widely changing and in some cases even reversing directions. Then this ends up in changing storm tracks, changing precipitation patterns, and extremes in temperature swings. Now, there is a combination of changing conditions that result in recent destructive paths of the weather events and tornadoes throughout the United States and coming up here in Canada. There's more frequent sudden stratospheric warming events over the North Pole. So a sudden stratospheric warming event is the atmosphere above the polar region warms up, and that compresses and forces the colder polar air and spreads out down into lower latitudes as far down as, say, Mexico, Texas, for example. And because of the shifting jet streams, changing jet streams, let me back up. And then you have the warmer, more humid air developing over the Gulf of Mexico, rising up, and the colder air coming down, they're going to meet each other. But because of the changing jet streams, it's going to force where you thought there would be tornadoes, that track is going to change. Now, with the last two geomagnetic storms, the accelerated solar winds, we have these changes in the atmospheric conditions. I believe they're calling it atmospheric pulses or something like that. And aside from all that, there's also surges in ozone destruction from geomagnetic storm conditions. It is the highly charged particles that when they interact with the atmosphere, that's what depletes our protective ozone layer, which then, of course, allows increased levels of ultraviolet radiation coming in, including the more harmful sea levels, ultraviolet sea levels. So you can have more of these destructive tornadic events throughout the United States. But Canada, we're not safe. Let me show you just a couple examples earlier this year, right outside my window. So on many occasions, the funnel clouds, they want to start up, but so far, well, at least in my neighborhood, they haven't touched down. They have touched down on other areas. This is the front of my house, and then behind my house, this bad boy here, he almost hit the ground. So Canada, don't think we're going to escape what the United States has been experiencing. So these things happen during geomagnetic excursions. And during the last one, there was no man-made nonsense. The excursion results in the destabilization and weakening of our protective magnetic field, which allows us increased levels of the space radiation to come in, whether it's coming from the sun or galactic cosmic rays or from sail down below, coming from below. So radiation is penetrating through our weakened magnetic field, charging up the ionosphere. That, with the dramatically changing jet streams, you don't know where these destructive weather events like this tornadoes are going to be tracking to. You don't know. I gotta stop for a minute. I gotta say something else. Now, this so-called Mike from around the world, a couple hours ago, and I will include the link on his Council of Time broadcast on SoundCloud. So you've heard him say that there's going to be a shift of the equator. And when he first spoke of this, he said it would be around the Kentucky-Tennessee region. A week later, he said it was going to be shifting up to the Great Lakes, and then back down. Now today, at the end of a 2-hour talk, he states now that the equator will be in Chicago. And he stated, in his words, a minimal issue. Now, you would have to have a minute, accurate set of data to know this. And to allow somebody to speak of this, broadcast it for public attention consumption, there's a contradiction, folks. So this Mike from around the world is saying that the equator is going to shift somewhere in the United States. That means the Earth's axis has to shift down like that. The contradiction. The understanding is the Earth's axis eventually follows the geomagnetic excursion. The geomagnetic excursion is going this way. But this all does align with my favorite scripture, Luke 21, verses 25 to 26. So, absorb that for what you will, the information he's putting out. I'm not sure if I believe it. I certainly do believe the earth is undergoing a shift. Changes. And yet he will not speak of Sal and its orbital approach coming in from the bottom, and what would be the obvious gravitational and electromagnetic effects. Take it for what you will. I'll include the link. So I can only give you my suggestions, my thoughts, my ideas that the Earth is developing multiple poles, such as this. And finally, to wrap up this talk, let's assume that the geomagnetic excursion is going to continue and conditions are to continue to deteriorate with these destructive storm events are only going to intensify. So this raises a few questions. Insurance coverage. Is the insurance going to cover it? No. What about to rebuild? Take, for example, North Carolina flooding. Loss of entire neighborhoods, fires, California. Rancho Cabo Verdes, California, those neighborhoods sinking and sliding away. Loss of entire towns from the tornadoes. Do you think there's enough materials, construction materials, to do all this rebuilding? Do you think there's enough manpower to rebuild entire towns? Do you think the government is going to restore or repair the infrastructure damaged? Power lines, for example. You have to take in consideration repeated events in the same locations and different locations. Isn't it going to be worth it to rebuild? Is the government, if they're knowing what's going on, are they going to be resistant to contribute resources for rebuilding? Or are they taking the resources, the materials, to continue to build their underground bunkers in cities? You're going to have a great numbers of people displaced with no homes, who are going to need water, food, medical aid, shelter, toiletries, etc. Is the U.S. government not looking to disband FEMA? I don't know. These are all things you need to seriously take in consideration as you're moving forward. Heck, who has insurance? When it comes time, if you have not yet been affected by these events, are you going to be able to renew your insurance? Here's another problem. Banks will not issue a mortgage, say to rebuild, unless you qualify for insurance. If you have no insurance, you will get no mortgage. Hey, just stating reality. Anyway, folks, that's it for now.